Hello, everyone.
All right.
We are live with our first panel discussion for the summit today, and the session will be moderated by Ajay. And I would give the stage to Ajay to kind of introduce the panelists and take it forward from there. Over to you,
Awesome.
Ajay.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kanish. Good, interesting uh, set of people that I have that I'm going to have this conversation with, talking about the role that industry has to play in supporting and enabling the overall startup innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem. Three fairly well-known faces and names from the startup ecosystem. We have Sanjay Bhai from 100x, we have Mitesh from Inflection Point Ventures, and Abhishek from T Ventures. Very different backgrounds. We have a corporate back operator in Abhishek. We have Sanjay Bhai, who's a tech entrepreneur turned angel investor and now running 100x, and Mitesh, who comes from an interesting finance background, turned investor network builder. So great to have all three of you over here. I'll just quickly ask you to introduce yourselves and what you've been up to. So over to you, Sanjay bhai.
So I run a fund called 100x VC. We do first check investing into startups. That's why we got a flurry of deals, kind of stuff. So virtually we run a cohort base. So we'll see across anywhere around 2,500 to 4,500 deals every cohort, kind of stuff. So large deal flow, diverse sectors which we invest into, and we our whole focus is to select moonshot ideas, and how do you nurture capital plus education is what we look at. Over
Thank
to
you.
you, Mitesh.
Thanks, Sanjay, and thanks Ajay and next team for having me over here. So quickly, started as a finance professional, as a CFO, having worked with three of the top consumer brands in the country, being Human, the apparel brand, then Ola, needs no introduction, and finally Book My Show. I've been personally angel investing since 2015, and in around end of 2018, beginning 2019, a group of us as CXOs came together and said that while we are probably doing our individual bit for the startups, if we all come together and institutionalize a platform, I think the impact of the sum total can be much higher. So with that thought process, Inflection Point Venture was born, founded by me and my co-founders Vinay and Ankur. Idea is to help the startup which have got the check from Sanjay Bhai. It is the next stage where we do seed stage to pre-series A, with a check ranging from a minimum 150K going up to $1.5 million. So we've done about 100 investments so far, and sector agnostic, stage agnostic. Believe in investing in great founders coming in at great valuation and running a great story. That's what, in a nutshell, IPV is all about.
Great. So people first come to Sanjay bhai, they go to Mitesh, and then finally they come to Abhishek. Over to you, Abhishek, for your intro.
Thank you, Ajay. It's a pleasure to be a part of Next. So, T Ventures is a corporate venture capital arm of Times Internet, which is also part of the BCCL group, Bennett Coleman Group, which publishes Times of India, Economic Times, has TV channels, etc. Uh, we started more or less as a accelerator called T Labs. Now it has evolved from there, where we invest somewhere between seed to Series B, but mostly in consumer technology companies. The idea here is that Times Internet reaches out to most around 700 billion consumers in India every month. And as Sanjay said, we see a lot of behaviors, and we see a lot of behaviors change of how India reads, how India consumes media, how India consumes content. And that's where we think that we can help companies, not apart from putting in the pure cash, but also from the knowledge of the Indian consumer, and how to build companies in media vertical, education vertical, healthcare, and so on.
Great. Thanks, Abhishek, for the introduction. And I think I'll come to you for the first one. Given the corporate backing and the balance sheet based approach that the group has had in first setting up T Labs as an accelerator and then morphing into T Ventures, how and where do you see corporates supporting and accelerating the startup? I mean, I think T Labs goes back to what, 2012, 2011. So it's almost like a decade that you have been kind of well entrenched into this first accelerating and now kind of hardcore investing. What do you see the role of corporates being in supporting the ecosystem as such?
That's a very interesting questions. I have, Ajay, a lot of views on this, and obviously this will take 30 minutes off the whole time panel itself. But I'll try to summarize it as much as possible. See, when we started T Labs, the idea was threefolds, and that's where I will make the distinction. The first was, you know, also for financial reason, and I'll come to that, right? The second was that, it was very early in the Indian startup ecosystem stage. We ourselves were coming out of the umbrella of the larger media conglomerate and trying to become a technology product company. So we were learning from startups as much as they were learning from us. And the third was, we knew that, not every innovation, unlike what other corporates think is going to happen in house, there's a lot of companies that are going to be built in the ecosystem. There's a lot of innovation that is going to happen outside our premise, and we wanted to participate in that, and we wanted to help those companies build. And then coming back to the first one, our first and foremost idea that we started with was that we are going to be a financial investor, and we are not going to be the innovation arm. And we have had this, Ajay, conversation many a times. And the reason for this was, I believe, and I personally believe, and I fought for it, was that, see, the challenge with an innovation arm is, and if it's not financially um, sustainable in itself, um, at some point in time, if the management changes, or if there is a different, something like a black swan event happened like COVID, the first thing to be shut down I have seen in my corporate journey is the innovation arm, or the backing gets withdrawn. And suddenly there is a whole pit that an innovation arm is looking at and what to do from there on. That's why we said, hey, we will be very much financially focused. We will be financially sustainable. We will only take bets in companies where we believe, that it's going to create an outcome for us, and we'll continue to back. And that's what evolution was. That we continue to, unlike any other accelerator, we continue to kind of write checks, further checks, participate in Series A, participate in Series B. We've gone on to participate in Series D, C's and D's as well, right? And that's where our IRR is very, very healthy out of the 70 investment that we make. And we also track our investments very much similar to a corporate VC would do, right? So we have we do in 3 years of chunks of investment, very healthy IRR. In fact, our third fund IRR is over 90%, to be precise, 95%. And that's what led to, you know, us doing very well with the ecosystem, and that's where the whole ecosystem learned about us and said, hey, we will go to these guys. One, they're financially backwards, and two, they help a lot in understanding the audience and what the audience looks like. And we are very free to share that kind of a data with us, very free to share and sit and talk to them and connect to the business heads who are running maybe TOI, ET, other verticals as well. We have Dine Out, we used to have Grade Up, which we sold to Baiju. So, we were very free to say that, hey, we will pass on that knowledge to all of you guys, whatever we have learned from the industry, and we will build we'll build the ecosystem and economy together.
Great. Thank you so much, Abhishek, for setting the context and the journey that you personally had setting up the accelerator and then the fund and the thesis that goes with it. I'll take this same question to Mitesh. I think because the conference or the summit is focused not just on corporate innovation and corporate venturing, but also one of the things that we are identifying as a key stakeholder is corporate leaders or senior executives who definitely have a strong role to play in enabling the emerging tech companies and startups. And because the way Inflection Point Ventures is made up of professionals from the industry, people who are senior leaders from the industry, CXOs, wearing that hat of Inflection Point Ventures and bringing in industry leaders and professionals into the mix and getting them to invest in startups. Where and how do you see that in taking forward startups to next level? I mean, beyond just the capital, and to some of the points that even Abhishek made, beyond capital is also a lot of industry smarts that comes in, right? So if you can just elaborate a bit on that.
Certainly. So, yeah, I think the most important point here, when I started, angel investing way early in 2015, The gap that I saw in the market, and so my co-founders, when we were looking at startups, is that good capital was available for a lot of good founders and good ideas and all, but the processes were broken. Poor founder to get that initial seed stage capital of let's say 1 CR will have to meet at least 25-30 different individual angel investors, and will have to repeat his speech in front of everybody, right? There is no coherence in the process. There is no timeline defined. He doesn't know of his. There is no feedback. Doesn't know of his success or failure. And even after the round is closed, after this hard work of 3-4 months and all, it's just a dumb financial investment where we strongly believe that early stage founders need capital is a must. Obviously, capital is the flash, right? But the blood is something where you are able to connect him to the industry, where you're able to kind of open doors for him. Not only knock on doors, but open doors for him in a meaningful way, right? Which can be your clients, your vendors, your strategic partners, your next round investors, VCs, and everywhere there. I think the network of CXOs comes in handy, where any industry, any sector, any company that you need to connect with within the community will be able to provide you in no time and a meaningful connect. So this is what I think the founders also love about us, as we go ahead. And from the investors perspective, while there were investment opportunities available, but most of these you will see that were created out of FOMO, that so and so super angel is investing and this guy is IIM and IIT, and hence we should invest. But what's the idea? How do I decipher it further? How do I understand at which stage it is? How do I understand what's the competitive landscape for that? I don't want him to make money immediately, but at some stage, what will be the unit economics? What will be the dynamics? So those, that the due diligence, nobody actually put any emphasis on that, and it was just done out of the reputation of the founder or the industry, or just out of FOMO, because my friend is doing or a super angel is doing, I should do it. So we wanted to kind of channelize that process also for the what the investor, he or she should be able to take a meaningful call based on the due diligence. Each one of us will have different risk appetite. What works for me might not work for you, and we all need to understand based on our risk appetite and expertise. There are certain sectors that we'll immediately get liking on. There are certain sectors which we might not understand, and that's where this collective expertise helps not only the investors but also the founders in a big way. So that's the ethos, and like I said, we have been able to grow from strength to strength, and have seen some amazing exits and follow-on rounds. While in early stage, the mortality rate for industry is about 75 to 80%. For us, the success rate is 50% plus if you were to look at the deals done till 6 months ago and the exits and follow-on rounds achieved against that. So that's the ethos, and most importantly, I think founder is the center point. Unless we are able to back the founder fully, not by the legal agreement provision where I'll enforce my board seat and reserved matter rights, but founder should see value in you and you should be able to help him. That's the mantra.
Great. Thank you so much for that, both of you. I'll come to you, Sanjay bhai, with an extension to that. I mean, probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I think after you sold off your last company, you became a full time angel, and it's probably been a decade, and probably one of the oldest full time angels who also comes from a tech or IT startup background as well, right? So in the last decade or so, where you have been investing in your personal capacity, but and also now through 100x, how and where have you seen this evolution of startup industry collaboration go, and how is it a validation for you from a standpoint of how the ecosystem has transformed because of industry, both at the corporate level, but also senior industry executives, like to the point that Abhishek made and Mitesh also touched upon, industry executives also getting involved, not just with financial muscle or investing in companies, but also enabling companies in navigating hierarchy within organizations. What does it count for you as an investor?
So for any early stage investor, it's all about exits, right? With corporates, kharid liya. So it's a rotation of money which happens across for investors. Uh, do Indian corporates give great financial exits? No. Most of them think across build versus buy. So there's a big lag in terms of how corporations in US look at acquiring companies and kind of value what they give. Whereas there's we have not seen large deals happening. While I think Walmart acquiring Flipkart changed a lot of stuff for corporates. We have seen Reliance dipping their toes, Tata coming across, but still, it's not something where they have a very focused strategy and approach. It's a very early days, I would say, across for Indian corporates to start, writing checks or build a success story around it. Most of them, who have set up shops are more in terms of saying that can I leverage the current corporate strength and give benefits to startups while I get equity. So it's less of saying that can I acquire this IP and build and scale it kind of stuff. Very few examples of success kind of stuff. A lot more to be done across. So, given a choice within my portfolio, I would like to see them raising money through a financial investor who is interested to build a value of the company financially. Whenever there is a strategic investor like a corporate putting in money, the value gets curtailed. The headroom goes because it is more of strategic interest that the corporate is investing, right? So both are different ways. There are few corporates who have been able to build value, who have been able to nurture, but still early days in India, I would say across. We are just started, just started. Still, we don't have a great model of corporate venture capital. Uh, yes, people have started allocating capital, but that is yet to evolve.
Okay, Abhishek, I can just extend that a little bit to you because you guys have evolved over time, right? I mean, from the accelerator to the CVC model of sorts, and to the points that you made when you spoke initially. I mean beyond just capital and other muscle that a Times Group or BCCL can kind of provide. I think the access itself, if there are 700 million touch points on a daily basis as consumers, I think that's huge for startups. But also at the same time, the startup should be in a position to absorb that, else it's not meaningful. But from your perspective, having seen this evolution for probably almost like a decade, T Labs and T Ventures, uh, how have you seen some of your portfolio companies probably who were earlier part of the T Labs program, a Times Group backing a company or you providing that access? How have you, or what did you see as the points or factors which investors or other potential partners and customers started viewing the companies differently, thereby helping the ecosystem move forward itself?
Good question. So, many aspects of this question. Let me just try to put one by one. Look, Ajay, what we did initially, very consciously, was that we said we are financial investors. We didn't say we are strategic investors. And also, it's the quantum of money that you put in. When we were putting in T Labs, we were putting in a very small amount. We were an accelerator. We started with 2011 $20,000 checks, and then we moved on to doing, I think, $100,000 checks as well. But the point was we were never coming up with a 10 million dollar rounds initially and saying, hey, we will acquire 30% of the capital or 30% of the company cap table, and we will put in so many veto rights that it will be impossible for have a wiggle room for the startup to for a later day. So we never, I would say, in a manner of saying, stinted the growth of any of the startup that we invested in, whether it was InShort, whether it was Pratilipi, or whether it was Pocket FM. We always came in on the same terms as financial investors. We always, wrote the first or second check, and we always, send the right signal to the financial community that we are financial investors. We are not strategic investors, and we will carry on. And this is also for financial gains, right? That being said, I think what Sanjay referred to is absolutely right. Not all startups have this kind of or all corporates have this kind of a thought process. There is very early days in India about how corporates are looking at venture capital. There are models that are very different. Somehow, what people want to do is, there's something that I read on Twitter, which I would say here. Most of the corporate venture capital in India is scared money. They're so scared of losing that money that they're putting out there into startups that they either put clauses that are not beneficial to the startups, or if the startup is, for example, not making profits, then they will never put money. And that's where I think the point is that rather than looking at the future, they're looking at the present and saying, hey, you're not profitable, will not give you a very large check or a large exit, right? Which startups have suddenly started doing, right? So large startups are acquiring smaller startups with a very good view of the future and not of the view of the present. And that's where I think the whole difference sets in. Whole, and this is going to change, right? So in 2011, 12, I remember you and I also having this conversation that there were not enough exits and not enough IPOs for in Indian startup ecosystem. That has changed, right? You look back and you realized we all said that will change. We don't know when. Everybody that we spoke to in the US, in China said, where are the exits? And we had no answers for them. Right now, India probably is one of the top few countries where the exits happened, whether it was startup buying out another startup or even public markets, right? So I think even if you look at the way some of the venture funds have started to begin, and some of the local money has started. Look, when I say local money, Indian companies and Indian you know individuals are becoming LPs to that. I think the whole thing has probably done a complete change about that has happened is good for the ecosystem. That will also happen with corporate venture capital. These are small baby steps for CVCs. They're trying to figure out the models. I think this scared money, they will realize that if they don't innovate internally with M&A and with CVC, they will be left behind. They want to partake in the financial story of India, the economic development story of India, and the startup story of India. So these models will emerge. I see that, if not in the next 2 to 3 years, in the next 5 years, you will see a lot of CVCs investing themselves as financial investors, buying out large companies. And, look, if the startups become profitable, then the equation of buying out companies will be very different, and that's going to happen very very soon. The whole time and again, if you look at only the present, you will never be able to invest. But if you look at 3 to 5 years in the future, I think the future is very very bright.
But when someone is investing scared capital, they are unable to see 3 5 years from today, and that probably is the showstopper. But also another thing, I think,
They will
I mean,
see Ajay, they will see more stories, right? Scared capital also can change to brave capital at some point in time,
yeah,
and it has.
yeah. But also another thing that even I mean, running corporate back programs, whatever shape or form, people can call it accelerators, innovation labs, whatever. I think another thing, at least something that has changed, is that I think for a good period of time it was marketing money that was largely kind of apportioned to doing programs, and then to do the inside sales as an innovation team was a big challenge for folks who were identified to run those programs. So basically, not having everyone on the same page, but rather spending money for the eyeballs rather than actually creating the impact that such programs are meant to or should.
So,
Uh,
most of the programs are PR, paper program tha.
that's as blunt as it can be. But so Sanjay, I'll come to you with the next question. I mean, we have engaged and have you around for, I mean, because it's the Bombay heavy panel, whatever launch events and programs you've had with different corporates, you've been notably present in many of them, and you yourself have engaged in so many others as well. So if you have seen how some of these corporate backed programs probably would have evolved, I mean, for whether some invested, whether someone became a customer partner, in terms of corporates whose programs, at least hearing from your portfolio companies, which you would rank as good programs, which, if not investing, if not becoming customer, helping validation, becoming the first proof of concept and pilot. If you were to name a handful of programs that you feel have added value to startups in different ways, Any that come to your mind? Any that you'd want to talk about?
No, I think the way again, as I say, we are in people business, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Investor hai, VC hai, corporates hai, everybody ends up with people. So let's say, for example, programs what we have worked with you, right? Uh, because it is driven by you, right? In your earlier avatar, we used to be regularly there at Bombay Stock Exchange. वो भी बंद हो गया, totally shut down because people, the person who is driving is no longer. So it's always going to be people driven. So we need more duplicates of what you are doing across, right? More people who are able to engage, and that's why I mean I've been, just to ensure that the ecosystem grows. I've been doing so many venture investing masterclass, right? In terms of helping other people, part whatever the experience, knowledge, in terms of saying that more people can become an angel investor, start, investing kind of stuff. So I think that has to be the foray, right? For people who have been through in couple of years, they have to continuously transfer that knowledge and bring in more people in this ecosystem. India
yeah,
is just a beginning, right? And onus lies on people like us who have already reaped the benefits from this ecosystem, right? We have been. It has been a rewarding career for all of us. So in that sense, yes, it is valuable to bring in more. Look at the programs like, for example, structures like Amazon, right? How corporate they imbibed everyone and use also for their advantage, right? And
mm,
hooked up people. How do you have corporates design those kind of programs where people get free credits, access to resources, rather than tying up something, right? कि भाई अरे मैं कुछ दे रहा हूँ तो सामने मेरे को कुछ मिलना चाहिए, right? The mentality of giving first
first, yeah,
has to start in India, right? Saying that देंगे तो वो अपने आप it comes back, right? So how do you first start giving to entrepreneurs, right? Entrepreneurs are hungry, resource hungry, scarce for resources. पैसा नहीं है, connection है. I mean, putting their own capital. I mean, everywhere they are like constrained, right? So how do you give them first, right? So for example, हम लोग at 100x runs across entrepreneurship Gurukul, which is a not-for-profit initiative. Try to educate all these founders on various aspects, be it pricing, be it business model.
yeah,
So how do you give back, right? Is going to be very important. So a lot of the programs can be aimed across. I'm not so worried about us not being able to replicate programs. I'm worried about people mindset at corporates, right? How do you ensure that corporates get educated of what are the needs of a startup, what are the needs of an entrepreneur? How do you work closely with entrepreneur and build, nurture?
yeah,
Entrepreneurs at seed stage are very fragile,
yeah,
right? And somebody, a large contract, let's say a SaaS company, right? I've seen large enterprises asking, saying that मेरे को on premise दे दो, I'll give you a big contract. Now the guy ends up building the whole software for that company, and the company's value is destroyed, right? So, and I have been party to so many of these conversations where you know you stand behind that founder as a spine and saying that na bol usko,
yeah,
right? This has been a regular feature with Indian corporates.
yeah,
They kill companies.
yeah,
So I mean I'm not saying that everybody does it, but even the great idea gets lost across. So one period which I tell to all customers, all the founders is, you'll end up with one large contract. Next 1 year you will be ending up building a software for that company. So baki danda bhul jao, right? So that's how
absolutely.
it works.
No, I totally agree with whatever Sanjay is saying. I mean, we used to see this a lot back in 2012, 2013, even today. I mean, then we stopped investing in SaaS, but I still see a lot of founders ask this question. So the mindset is definitely a regressive where it's very hard to change the mindset. And one thing that I keep saying to other people is that, I mean, I will help you without expecting anything in return. One day, when you find a similar person in similar situation, just pay it forward.
Yeah.
So pay it forward is something that everyone in Indian ecosystem should inculcate right now. If you do anything because of a transaction,
Yeah.
you will not have the right mindset of doing it. Right? Don't
Or
expect
Abhishek, if you
return.
look into it, that all this large corporate will not say anything to Salesforce, but वो startup छोटा है, वो हर तरीके से बेचारे को दबाएगा.
I
True.
think I think the problem lies with corporate VCs being run by people where internally they have to show value addition. I think the entire chain works on saying that, okay, I have won a great deal for this corporate, for my corporate, where I have been able to squeeze back this startup and got a great business deal or investment deal or something. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, it's never a win-win situation. It's being perceived as a win-lose situation.
वो CFO maximum CFO के उधर अटकता है.
And that's why it's important for the innovation program or the CVC to have the skin in the game and think financially. If they think financially themselves, if they say that, okay, I have 5% in this company, and if this company gets 100 million more and gets valued at 300 million down the line, my suddenly my 5%, and however it gets diluted, but mota mota will be 15 million, right? And suddenly I've converted my 2 millions into 15 million, or my 3 million into 15 million. That made a lot of sense internally when I was talking to my promoters that, hey, I invested a certain amount, although I invested very small, but I made 10x of that money. And that money over time started to build up and become very, very large, right? And that's how, if the models are built correctly, where the innovation program can go and show the CEO, hey, I have added hundred millions of dollars on your balance sheet. One, that program will never get shut. Two, if you create the right incentive, you will attract the right people to run those programs. Three, you will end up thinking right for the startup, because you will not think about ki I extract maximum value. You will think about how do I make them investable,
Yeah.
right? So all of this actually worked for us. The way we started was with, we will be financial in nature, period. We got a lot of pushback, ye le lo, wo le lo, contract le lo. We will be financial. If that value is lost, I am done. So let this get more investment. So I always was rushing to VCs, and VCs was like कि so I fought internally saying कि ये project नहीं करना है. अगर project करना है तो पूरा पैसा देना है. I had set up terms that, initially when we used to have this enterprise startups,
Yeah.
to my CFO, that pay 50% advance, 60% advance to the startup if you want to get the project done. And you cannot lock him for 100% of the time. No on the premise things, no customization for yourself. I mean, little bit of customization here and there, and
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
good feedback is fine. But you just can't lock in the startup.
Yeah, and I think that is where, I mean, beyond just creating a structure which is a corporate program or whatever, I think having leaders with the right kind of mindset, where you're not trying to squeeze the startup, or you're not just looking at your own benefits, but seeing how it can be a win-win. I guess that is where a lot of startups also need that hand-holding or that shepherding within the organization, and probably many of them are not equipped to do that as organizations. I mean, they're looking at whether it is the eyeball effect, whether it is the 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 PR effect, whatever they're looking for, but they're not set up with the intention in one way or the other might be there, but it is not guided in the right direction. So that I'll come to the next question. And the previous speaker Simon, he spoke about multiple models. So it is not just about having an accelerator or a CVC, but there are so many other ways in which corporates, like Sanjay Bhai rightly pointed out. I mean, if you look at AWS, I guess even providing the infrastructure to build on top of, but also probably leveraging their customer connects to create joint GTM and other things. Corporates can definitely help startups in number of ways. So Abhishek, I'll come to you with the next one. I mean, what are the opportunities that you see for corporates to really make that difference and take a step ahead? in terms of supporting startups? I mean, beyond the usual accelerator and CVC models, what are the other ways you think corporates can lend their weight behind startups to help them grow faster and bigger?
Yeah, one of the biggest ways I think Sanjay alluded to in his last answer that he was giving is, yaar, rather than going to SAP, go to um, a small company, give projects to a small company. In fact, governments are doing that. US government has always
Yeah,
done that. Israel government has done that. Indian government has started doing that. If you start a program led by the CEO within the company that ठीक है, if you can't find a software, if you can't find a technology, if you can't find a vendor that is small, that's fine. But if 50% of the software stack is going to go to startups or non-traditional etc companies, you will be supporting these companies with the same kind of payment terms, or maybe a better payment terms. Not paying them after 1 year or 60 days or 90 days, that is norms, maybe paying a little bit in advance. So small tweaks, but just having an overarching. And see, the first part, again, I will come to that previous thing, is mindset. It's not about being able to do that. If you think through this, you will be able to do that. You'll be able to create a charter in your organization which says that, hey, I will support startups.
yeah,
Because and this is the first thing that we did as well. We'll support startups because we have to learn from them.
true.
If you have to become nimble, and if you have to, the mindset is that we will learn more than we part to them, then you will be able to change those charters. But if you are in this mindset that you know startups don't make the uh, what do you call right solutions, or
Hmm.
this solution is not going to be buggy, or this solution is going to be buggy and we should not work to startup, then that will not help, right? I agree that the solution sometimes will be buggy, but then
Yeah,
startups will change it to, for a very innovative solution to come from a corporate, you will have to wait for a couple of years. Whereas there could be a solution out there, if you start to apply your head to it, which can add to your top line, it can add to your bottom line. You
yeah.
have to start thinking from those perspective, that how these solutions are going to help accelerate your own and expand your own business.
But Abhishek, to that point, I mean, having had experiences where startups have conducted successful pilots and POCs, and I'm talking of POCs which probably ran for 4 months to 6 months, and all boxes ticked, including pricing being uh, good, but still हमारा XYZ टेक्नोलॉजी जायंट के साथ 3 साल का कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है, तो लेट अस कीप द स्टार्टअप वार्म, एंड वंस दैट कॉन्ट्रैक्ट गेट्स ओवर, then इसको हम consider कर सकते हैं, which is kind of very unfair to startup because they've anyways done the pilot or POC at zero cost, and they're just going to be sitting there watching someone else eat the cake. So, like Sanjay pointed out about educating investors, what do you think is the best way to educate corporates to kind of whether be nimble, or from a mindset perspective, is there a, a magic potion that is there which corporates को पिलाया जा सकता है जिससे they become better at this?
I think, Ajay, you will be barking up the wrong tree. It's, in fact, educate startups to not fall into these traps. Just figure out कि कितने दिन तक उनको पिच करना है, कैसे चलेगा. See, this is, I would say, I always used to coach startups कि यार, the moment you realize कि यहाँ पे नहीं होने वाला है, and this is that they're just going to keep you warm and you're not going to move on, right? Your
Yeah,
time is precious. Move on to
absolutely.
another people, move on to other set of startups, go to mid-market customers who are going to probably like your solutions better. And obviously, if everybody is saying the same thing and your solution is not being applied, then there is something wrong in your selling or in your solution itself, right? So
True.
just teach them, and then again, once, see, this is what has happened, and this is what has happened in India. The moment corporates and large enterprises started to realize that other people are using the startup, mid market is using the startup, and they are
Hmm.
slowly eating into our profits and our revenues and our market share, they started to realize that they have to also work with startups. So ecosystem will come together, right? It's not that
Yeah,
ecosystem is governed by, and in today's day and age where technology has a maximum impact on the way that you do business, the way that you conduct yourself, um, what I say is, yaar, rather than a 10-year process of you getting back that feedback, you will get that feedback within the couple of months.
Just one more point I want to add over there,
Go
Ajay,
for
if
it.
you allow. I
Yeah,
think,
please go for it.
and this is something based on my observation of this entire rally, some people as it may call it madness of creating unicorn after unicorn and all the way the money is flowing into the system and all. The problem that India is going to face or the startup ecosystem is going to face is not dearth of capital; it will be dearth of talent. The way bigger startups are able to raise money and are able to kind of attract right talent by actually paying salaries which are sometimes above market as well and all. I think the biggest problem is whatever funds that you are able to give to the early stage startups or even say series A startups and all, it's so difficult for them to actually hire talent or the required talent and then to retain them, right? We have seen startups offering something to a tech resource, and within 2 months the guy will come back with three other offers and trying to renegotiate, and there is no certainty that he will actually join. So one interesting concept that we have been discussing internally and have heard some corporate VCs also discussing is how do you fund talent to startups? It's easy to fund capital, but is there a way that you can actually fund startup with some talent, right? At early stage, they might not be able to have a CBO or a CTO or a COO. How do you actually kind of help them with these resources, which gives their certain time, and help them with this talent, which otherwise will be very, very difficult for them to hire on a regular basis and all. And that's where I think the next wave of innovation has to come as far as corporate VCs are concerned.
Ajay, the
Oh, thank
way
you, thank you. Yes.
the way the if you want to educate or build a program within corporates, first and foremost need to be, let's say for example, you select 10 people in your management and give them capital of 5 lakh rupees each to invest in startups as an angel investor. Okay. So that will give a 1 year runway in terms of saying that how do the other angels think, how do they invest. They become part of a syndicate, like how Mitesh runs across, right?
Yeah,
So things build over there. Secondly, if you look into how foundations of large corporates have been created, right,
yeah,
to invest their what do you say, the CSR capital,
yeah,
right? वो फाउंडेशन का स्ट्रक्चर अभी जैसे बना है, वैसे ही वेरी सिमिलर देयर नीड्स टू बी अ structure for investing into startups, right? Today foundations have right people, right avenues. It is reported in a balance sheet. It has been it started in a small way, but now it is a structured way of giving back as a CSR capital. Very similar, corporates need to get into that whole investing side of it, and responsibilities have to be created accordingly on the impact of the startup, not impact on the corporate, right? How much impact they delivered. How do you measure those capital on the CSR side in terms of impact created, lives impacted, right? काफी सारा है वैसे ही how they impacted across the startup stuff. So काफी सारे हैं. I'll get this corporates, couple of people become part of investment committee in couple of funds.
yeah,
So various ways. I think, I mean, there are enough and more of. अगर mindset open है तो बहुत कुछ हो सकता है, राइट? इफ यू आर नॉट सेल्फिश, सेइंग दैट अगर मैं पैसा डाल रहा हूं तो मेरे को सामने मेरा क्या होने वाला है, that selfish attitude needs to go away, and start thinking like angel. Like, yes, we invest for creation of wealth,
yeah,
but there is some bit of passion involved into it to build and see that those companies grow, run, enjoy that process of building a company from scratch, see them growing. It feels like magic.
yeah.
तो वो थोड़ा enthusiasm और passion अगर management board में है तो things will happen.
Great. No, thank you so much for all three of you and chiming in on that one. I'll come to you with the last question. Just a couple of words there. So while we have seen a lot of companies from the banking financial service industry setting up fintech accelerators, and that's kind of been the flavor of past several years. If you were to pick one industry where if corporates were to come ahead and create different forms, whether it is accelerators, CVC, innovation labs, some of the areas that Sanjay Bhai pointed out to as well, over the next 3 to 5 years, which would be one or two industries where startups could genuinely be a game changer, plugging into a traditional industry?
If I have to pick across, I think see, software is eating the world, right? So how do you ensure that software is going to touch all the traditional industries in whatever the way it may be, and create that ripple effect in every aspect. But my top industries would be automotive. I believe a huge story is yet to be built in automotive industry, autonomous vehicles. Big story going to happen in next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Next, I'm looking at the defense side of it, how the defense story can be built across, right? And lastly, the manufacturing in India
Hmm.
is right now still a laggard. Like how do you build a tech-driven manufacturing, right? How do you
Hmm.
influence and build? I think these three industries is something which I'm looking at.
Very cool. Mitesh, if you want to take a stab at that.
Yeah, I think only one industry, VC industry. That is something which needs the major overhaul, like we all just spoke about and agreed on it, I believe. So I think there, that's where there's innovation in terms of more nimble-footed, more broad-minded investors who are not looking at things from a 30,000 feet view, but working closely with the startup, understanding the problem, and think of a win-win solution. I think that approach is required.
Cool. Abhishek, your
Yeah.
closing words on that?
Sure. No, Ajay, I agree with Sanjay there. I think you have to see technology as a layer over every other industry, and that's how technology changes the very fundamental way of any industry it does business. Whether you know EVs replacing ICE, uh, internal combustion engine, I mean, and or whether providing a distribution to the consumer industry, right? It's technology is going to
Yeah.
change the fundamental behavior of the industry in itself, right? Sometimes from inside out, sometimes from just supporting. And I would add the same thing. I think industry itself, manufacturing, power sector, automotive sector, these are the three industries, and agri as well. I think there's a lot to be done in agri tech. These are the four sectors that I think are going to have a massive change in the next 5 years.
Great, great. Thank you so much, Abhishek, and thank you, Sanjay bhai, Mitesh, for joining in on this. I think that was fairly good conversation. Uh, Ganesh, do we have time for a question, or how are we placed?
We are short of time and we are already 10 minutes ahead. So I think so we'll take
Okay,
questions
cool.
on offline. So
All right,
audience,
cool.
if you have any
I think
questions, you
Abhishek
can.
already took a couple of them, I think,
Yeah.
on the chat. But thank you so much, Abhishek, Sanjay bhai, and Mitesh. Good chatting, and thanks for your time.
Thanks for
Okay.
having
Thank you,
us.
Ajay.
Thanks.
Thank
Over
you
to
so
you,
much,
Ganesh.
everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you
Ajay.
so much,
Thanks, Sanjay.
everyone.
Over to you,
Thanks,
Ganesh.
Abhishek.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye bye.